Hi, George here, and in this video project, we'll be making this astronaut standing on Mars image, and for this we'll be using a couple of photographs. First one here is an actual Mars picture from NASA, and the second one is something which I made over on an AI site, so this is kind of a fake image, but it looks real good. Works out great for our combined montage here. Now we'll be covering a lot of different techniques in this video. It's kind of a hodgepodge of stuff, which I think makes it a bit more interesting. And it's a good way to practice a lot of the different techniques we talk about here on my YouTube channel. If you want to learn everything about how to use Photoshop elements, YouTube isn't the best way to do that because it only covers just some stuff. The best way is to get my complete training course for Photoshop elements, and you can find out more about that on my website. I'll put a link for that right down there in the description. Now, as you go through this thing, we'll be building up this project file over here, right-hand side, a lot of steps as you can see. But we'll start off here with this basic background image. I'm just going to close down the working file, get that out of the way. Here we go. Now, our first step is to get the astronaut here inside of that picture. Right now, I have both of these open in the photo bin, and I'll put links for these two images in the description so you can go ahead and just download these to work on this project. If you want to have the whole finished project file after we finish this project, I'll post that up on my Photo Coach program for Photoshop Elements. If you don't have that, I'll put a link for that in the description as well. Okay, now the easy way to do this is to have your main project file open, and then just come down, grab the other picture, and just drag it in like that. And this brings it in as a smart layer, and I want that just for one bit here. And that's what I want to resize this image. Hold the Control key down and tap the E key. That opens up the transform handles. Then just grab a corner and drag that up until it's about 3/4 the size of the image. Here we go. Right about there. Hold the Control key down and tap the T key. That opens up the transform handles. The actual position is not important. I'm just putting them a little bit off from the center, so it's a bit of a better, interesting looking balance. And notice that this has a green background, and our Mars image is kind of orangish. So we have a color difference going on in there. We'll take care of that as we move forward. We also, of course, need to remove this background in here. Before we get to that, there's one little touch up down here on the background. That's at the bottom. That's just this little note in here about this image from NASA. I just want to hide that. We can do that very easily. I'm just going to zoom in here on that. There's not that much here, so just some clone stamping is all we need. Grab the clone stamp tool, and you can see there's the brush size. I'm going to bring that size up a little bit with the right square bracket. That's 45. Now it's a hard edge. I prefer having this on a soft edge for this. This go ahead, we'll find a soft edge. There's 45 right here, soft edge. That should do the job. The reason I want that soft edge is so that it blends in better when you don't see that edge. Now to use this tool, hold the Alt key down and click. That's where you want to copy from. Then bring it down here and then just paste in. And just go along and fill the whole thing in. Now you'll be getting some duplication in here like we have right there. We'll take care of that on a second pass. Let's just first get the majority of this out of the way. Go clear along like that. Looks pretty good. Now I want to get rid of the duplication. So come over here, Alt and click, and just get rid of that one. And same thing over here, Alt and click someplace and just kind of work around and grab a few things randomly from around the image and work in until you no longer have any of that duplication showing. And that looks nice and clean. Let's now use the Control 0 to go back to fit screen, and that's taken care of. Actually, I can still see a bit of duplication right there. Didn't spot that before. This bit here and that bit up there. Let's just take care of the bottom one, Alt, click, and get that out of there. There we go. And then Control 0 back to fit screen again. All right, that's fixed. Let's now bring back up our astronaut layer, and that's that little eye right there. That's either show or hide your layer. Click on this layer, and we now need to make a selection around the astronaut. Now I'm currently in Photoshop Elements 2024. So we have the select and subject right here. Same thing for the past few versions of Photoshop Elements. If you have an earlier version, then just use your standard selection tools like a polygonal lasso tool or one of your selection brushes to make your selection, whatever you're comfortable using. I'll just use subject, and there we go. Now, a problem with the subject select is that it doesn't always give you a good selection. It may miss some things. Let's just scroll in here, and you can see already it's missed this inside part of that hand. So I'll go over to the polygonal lasso tool. We want to remove that from our selection. This is the selected area, and that's inside, so I want to remove that, and that's the subtract right down here. I have my feathering set at 0, and then I'll come in here and just overlap the selection and work right along that edge. And when you're using this tool, take your time, give it a beat between each click, come outside, double click, and that removes that. Let's now go up here a little bit. I thought there'd be something right there, and there is. With the subject select, when you have things that are close together, it will often miss that. Double click, that's gone. Or things that are inside will often miss that as well. So it's just a matter of going back in, spotting those areas, and then taking out or cleaning up the things that were missed with the subject select. It's a very useful tool, but it's not perfect, and still does often require a little bit of cleanup. But that's okay. This is very easy to do. I'm just clicking along, and then Photoshop Elements comes in and connects those clicks with lines. If you need a curve, just put your dots closer together. You have a straight line, the dots can go further apart. Okay, that's good. And right here, I think I'm just going to kind of make that a little bit sharper right in there. There we go. And I think that is everything. That all looks good. Okay, let's just scroll back out. Now I'm using the scroll wheel on my mouse for this zoom in and out. If you don't have that set up, go up to Edit, come down to Preferences and General. And it's right here, Zoom with Scroll Wheel. It's a real nice option to have selected. Okay, now that we have our selection made, let's go up to the button right here. This is the Add Layer Mask button. And it gives us a layer mask. Now the first thing you want to check when you do this is to zoom in and take a look at your edge. And there's a bit of a dark line happening right around there, so the subject select wasn't quite in tight enough. We've got a little bit of that background showing. Now it's easy to fix in here. Just scroll back out again. We're on the layer mask side. If you right click on the layer mask, come down to Add Mask to Selection, and it remakes your selection. It just brings it back up again. Let's now go back up here to the layer mask, right click, and delete that layer mask. Let's now go up here to Select, come down to Modify, and Contract, and set this at just 1 pixel and OK. It just brings that edge in by 1 pixel, and that should be enough to get rid of that little bit of an outline. Let's do our layer mask again. Okay, looks good. Let's just zoom in, and that was perfect. That's all we needed to do to get rid of that dark outline on there. It was just about 1 pixel wide. So that is fixed. That's looking really good. Something else I want to adjust in here, and that's in the face mask. You can see we have a bit of green showing in there. You can try to color that out if you want to, but since it's just a little bit in here in the mask, all we really have to do here is just to come in and remove the green from that, just basically remove the color. That should be fine. Go up to your layers, double click on the image side of your layer. Now notice that we have this smart object right down here, smart object thumbnail. I have to get rid of the smart object for this to work. And to remove this from being a smart object, go over here to the name, right click on the name, simplify layer. It's now no longer a smart object. The reason why I did that is so that I can then paint on this layer and actually change the pixels. So let's go over here to the sponge brush right here. Now you might be seeing this hand up here with a circle in it. If you do, click on that, come down to the options panel and click on the sponge. Set this at desaturate. I'll bring the flow clear to the top, that's okay. Make sure it's a soft edge brush, and the size is whatever is good for you. And that's a 15 pixel, and that's good enough. And then just paint right over the areas that you want to remove the color from, and it will then take out all of the color, making that just a gray area. And for our use, gray is just fine. It will blend in just fine. So that's all we need to do. And just come over here and get the green that's right in this area here. A little bit of green up in the face mask up here. I'll take that out as well. Now this trick works out very well if a black and white area would look okay in your photograph. A lot of times it won't. In this case it will, so this is a good solution. Now something else with Photoshop Elements, the same trick doesn't always work on every image. It depends upon the image, depends upon the particulars in there. In this case, I can get rid of this green that's in here just by coming in and removing the color, and it blends right in with our picture just fine. Okay, that's about all I think I'm seeing in here on the green. Looks good. Control 0 back to fit screen again. Okay, now we need to get the color looking better with our background image. The background's very orange, and this is a very cool image. We need to warm the image up, and for that, go up here to Layer, come down to New Adjustment Layer, and let's do a photo filter on this. Where it says Use Previous Layer, check that, choose OK. The warming filter is good, but it's not good enough. If I bring this way up, If I go too far, notice how it kind of goes yellow in there. I don't want to have it going yellow, so it's not really the right color for us. I'll change this down here to an orange, and that should have less of that yellowing happening. Okay, it goes clear up here. It's still kind of mostly orange clear to the top. So that's much better. And then find a good setting. I was using 77 in my original example, so I'll put it back at 77 again. It kind of pushes everything over into that orange, and that, to my eye at least, matches the orange in the background pretty well. Let's see, here's our before, and there's after. We've really warmed that up, and that helps to blend that image into the background. I want to brighten the image up a little bit as well. So let's go up here to Layer, come down to New Adjustment Layer. This time we'll use Levels. Again, check that checkbox, choose OK. Here's our levels. I don't want to have the blacks any darker, so I'll leave the black alone at 0. I want to lighten up the midtones. That's our mid control right here. Let's go to the left-hand side. You see how it lightens the whole image up in the midtone range? Let's not go too far on this either. I think somewhere around here, 1.25, that was pretty good. Just kind of lightens up those darker areas in there. And I'll brighten the brights up just a bit, and that's the right side. Pull that in. If you go too far, it begins to block up like that. You don't want that, so just bring it in just a little bit, just subtle. And that looks pretty good to my eye. Again, it's a personal preference on these things. So there's before and there's after. Just kind of lightened up that whole area in there. Again, bringing it closer to feel what we have in the background. I'm still a little bit too washed out in the background. The shadows are a bit light compared to the shadows in here in our foreground image. So I want to get some more contrast in the background image. And for that, let's come down here to background. And let's go up to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and Levels. And check that checkbox again. Choose OK. Okay, and here, put the left side in. This is your darks. Pull that in to the right. And that darkens down the black areas. And I think 30 is looking pretty good, 31. So these dark areas now are looking much more like the dark areas in our foreground. Again, trying to bring the two images closer together. We can lighten our midtones a little bit. I'll bring that up to just a bit more than that, maybe about 1.2. That looks pretty good. And I'll lighten the lights up again, about the same amount. We did it at 241 right there. And that's a pretty nice match. So that takes care of just the basic stuff in here. We can now come in and do an effect on this to give us that otherworldly quality that we had. And for that, I want to merge these layers together into a new layer. So click on the top layer up here, and then hold down a special keyboard shortcut. It's the Control, Shift, and Alt keys, and tap on the E key, and it merges all these layers up onto a new layer right here. We can now apply a filter on this layer, and it will affect everything in the picture. Go up here to Filter, come down to Filter Gallery. Here we go, and the one that I'm using is in the Distort section right there. It's called Diffuse Glow, and I have my settings here. I put a lot of grain in here. Grain is at 10. My glow amount I have at 4, and the clear amount is at 15. So 10, 4, and 15. And it gives us this real nice kind of overly hot feel to the image. Choose OK. There's the picture. Now it's a little low on contrast again by adding in that glow and adding in this grain effect. We also lowered our contrast a touch. So I'm going to bring that up, but this time I won't be doing it with levels. Instead, I'll bring the saturation up, and that will do kind of the same thing for us and give us a lot more color back into the image again. Go up to Layer, come down to New Adjustment Layer, and you want Hue Saturation. Check that checkbox, choose OK. The saturation is your middle control, and just pull this to the right and see how we get a lot more color in there all of a sudden. And I have mine set at 46 in my example at the beginning. There we go. And there's our finished image. Now at this point, make sure you save this. It's going to save it as a Photoshop Elements file, PSD file. And that will save all of your layers over here. So File, come down to Save. It will automatically put it into your Photoshop Elements format right here. There's my astronaut on Mars. That's the one I saved at the beginning. I'll just save it on top of that one. That's fine. Choose Yes. It's now saved as a Photoshop Elements file. Now, if you want to just print this out, you can print right from this. You don't have to do anything over here with your layers. That's all fine. Just go up to File, come down to Print, set your print options, and then print your image. If you want to use this, either sending it in an email or putting it up on the web, anything like that, then this has to be converted over to a different file format. I tend to like using the PNG format nowadays. And the easy way here is File and use Save for Web. Set this at PNG 24 for color, and choose Save. Everything else can just be left alone, and that'll be your PNG. Or you could go over here to File and Save As, and then just change your setting down here to the PNG file format right here. It does the same thing. Choose OK, and that's now saved out. Now, when you do that, one thing about saving it to a JPEG or saving it to a PNG, you're not ending up with your JPEG or PNG right here inside of Photoshop Elements. You're still working in your Photoshop Elements file. You still have your layers over here. But your saved file, your saved JPEG or your saved PNG is on your hard drive where you just saved it to. So just go over there to get those files and then upload that to the web, however you want to use that. As I mentioned earlier on, if you want to get this working file over here, you can get that if you have my Photo Coach for Photoshop Elements program. That's a nice thing to have anyway if you're learning how to use Photoshop Elements and you've been using it for a while, but you want to have refresher courses and you want to get specific information about different steps. It's a great tool for that. But I'm also posting all these project files over there as well, and I'll put a link for that right down there in the description. If you want to help me continue making videos here on YouTube, an easy way to do that is just to send me a thanks, and that's that thanks button right down there, bottom right-hand corner of the video. Make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you next time.